educating yourself about what it is that you're getting into fully is part of that due diligence. It's part of knowing your craft. It's part of knowing your business, and that's more than just seeing yourself by yourself at the peak of your industry. It's about, what does my company look like? What does my brand look like? What does my team look like? What am I bringing as a company?
Hey everybody, welcome to It Takes a Village. I'm your host, Delina Medhin, and this is the most personal I have ever been. It Takes a Village is a time capsule collection. 10 intimate episodes where I share with you the people that have guided almost every business decision I've made. In 2008, I began my career as a makeup artist, taking on clients in the evenings and weekends, trying to fit it around my 9-to-5 job. And in 2015, I made the I wish it was hard, but I was tired of working for somebody else decision to quit that corporate job, that corporate 6-figure job, and fully commit to being a self-employed entrepreneur. That's where the roller coaster of finances, belief in myself, and how much I was willing to endure for my dream was really put to the test. When we see social media, we always look at the end result. But this collection is a deep dive into the process. To my aspiring entrepreneurs, this is my open love letter to you. The most important thing I did was to get around like-minded people. People who believe in themselves have the ability to inspire you to believe more in yourself. My dream for you is to develop an unshakable belief in your own ability to win and to identify your own personal village so you can become. Let's get into it.
Hi, Dee. Hi, Delisha.
Hey, Dee.
Hey, Dee. Hey, Dee. I'm excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me, sincerely.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. We've known each other for such a long time, and, you've been a big sister to me. So, okay, I want to start with where we met and how we know each other. So, the summer before I went to school was when I met you. So you were living with my cousin, right? She's like my play cousin, but she's like my cousin growing up Eritrean. There weren't that many of us around. And so Rosa was like a big sister to me. And in the grand scheme of the Eritrean kids, there weren't really that many of us. So she was like the closest in age to myself and my sister. So, okay, so we were in college. So you lived with Rosa. You all were roommates, but also best friends. When did y'all meet, actually? I want to know more about that story.
What's funny is that she and I met our first day for Prio. So all of the Black kids get to come in a little bit earlier, get adjusted, and figure out what college is going to be about. And I met her literally my first day in Prio. And then we went completely different ways for the whole first semester. We lived in the same dorm, separate sides of the same hall. And so eventually, we were cool, we were always cool. And then eventually it's we just never crossed paths because I was always inside. I'm super introverted, so I was not on the scene at all. And yeah, we were opposites in that way. So then by the time I had actually decided we were hanging out second semester, we got a lot closer. And then from there, we were just best friends. She was the person that connected me to the outside world of what was going on in college. Because all I knew was, the people lived in my dorm and school. And then that was it. So we met, like I said, that first semester, very first day of college, which was crazy. And then we've been connected ever since. So
that's wild. Yeah. I met you then your third. So I think your friendship had developed already at that point. College friendships move fast too. It's right? Now I feel it's let me just feel a person out. But back then it was we were just so open to meeting new people and having those type of friendships. So yeah, so I remember meeting, I think you were in your junior year or about to start your senior, maybe it was about to start your senior year, and I was coming into my freshman year. So I went to NC State, you went to Carolina, but because, you know what I mean, I knew Rosie, I met you there. So we knew each other, and I feel we were cool, but we didn't really know each other.
Right.
You said, you were introverted, so we didn't really hang out that much.
Unless you came over to the house, that was pretty much it. It's I'm more than welcome to have you in our place and welcoming people, but yeah, wasn't out there like that.
Yeah. So okay, so then I'm trying to think about when we really connected again. And I think it was uh we stayed in touch, I think, while you were still in the area. I think you still lived in
Mm-hmm.
like Chapel Hill area for a little bit. Um, but then I feel like it was like almost like a gap and then fast forward to like New York. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's exactly how I remember it. Like, I think before New York, like the last conversations I can remember having with you were once we moved out of the townhome, everybody like went their separate ways. I moved into my own place and like coming to visit and us talking, literally like, Virgo talk, all kinds of other like just chit chat, college stuff. Um, yeah, I don't remember anything in between, like
I don't
there
either.
and New York. And that's like what, like 5 or 6 years maybe in between that time.
Right. Well, there's Rose. There was Rose's wedding too, and I don't know. During Rose's wedding, were you already living in New York?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So you were already living in New York. So you moved what year?
I moved in 2010. So I moved to New York in
Okay.
2010. Um, and then what was this wedding? I think it was like 2013, something like that.
Okay. So that was the same year I moved because I moved up into 2013.
Yep, yep. And I
Yeah.
remember us having like a conversation, like we went out for lunch whenever you were thinking about moving to New York. So those two, like from the conversation on the couch in college, literally to me, it's like fast forward New York conversation at
Yeah.
some seafood place. I can't even remember the name of it now.
Oh my gosh, your memory's good. I don't even remember going to this
Yeah, it
thing.
was
This
on
was in.
14th Street.
Oh yeah, that was a nice restaurant.
Right? It was like one of them seafood brunch, like brunches in New York are unforgettable.
That was such a good. I remember that. Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I've been to a restaurant that grand since I've even moved here. That was a big restaurant.
Huge upstairs, downstairs. They're well known too. I really can't remember the name of it, but I remember us sitting there and us talking about like you coming to New York. And I had like all kinds of ideas on how like you were going to do my makeup. And I like I literally felt like I was willing you to New York because I'm like, I don't know who else I'm going to trust to do this. I'm like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're interested. What? You want to come
Yeah.
to New York? Fantastic. Let's
LOL.
do this.
So funny. Okay, so you were my family. I mean, now you've since moved to North Carolina, but while you were here, you were very much my family here in New York. Like during Thanksgivings, like all of that. Moving to New York for me was huge because it was the first time I had really left like home. I lived in North Carolina or 10 to 15 max 20 minutes away from my parents ever. So like moving, I know I never left until like, coming here. So, um, you know, holidays can be tough. Everybody knows that. And what I realize in New York is that a lot of people for like Thanksgiving do like Friendsgivings and like, it's like
Yes.
a really big thing up here. Like people really take that type of stuff seriously. So you would invite me to different places and you'd be like, let me check on my little sister.
Exactly. It's like, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? Oh, you need to come through. Like, I think for some reason we've always had that type of connection where it's offering whatever like insight or guidance I had at the time to whatever space you were in at the time. Um and like I definitely feel that as we've grown, it's become completely reciprocal as well, right? So it's not to say that there wasn't things at the time that you knew that I didn't, but just in terms of experiences or just like maybe how to approach things or even being in that spiritual mind, like thinking about things that you couldn't see or thinking about like, we would talk about us being Virgos and like I was way off on that deep end already. So it was like, it always felt like whatever there was, like there was some reason that we stayed connected, that we stayed in touch, and that we felt very aligned from the beginning. And it was always interesting to think like, oh yeah, me and Delina are cool, but it's like interesting to think like we're different. There is an age difference between us, like our experiences, our interests, are varied, but our mindsets are very similar. We've always connected on, you know, our approach to life.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's been a reason, like the universe brought us together for a reason. And each time it's kind of been like moving both of us forward in one way or another. So it's like, oh, Star Sisters, the whole Star Sister thing.
Yeah. I feel that because I wouldn't say that, it's very hard for me to put people in the position of like guiding me, like giving them this like title of like what they say is something I internalize, but you've always had that position. Like whether I was in college or like coming to New York, like there was always this like feeling of like calmness and like guidance that I feel like, we've had where you're like my, where you're like the like teardrop.
But my makeup though, hold up.
My makeup though. So yeah, you've had like a few different positions while you were in New York. Like you came to New York for music.
Absolutely.
I think, right? Okay.
For music and for film. So it's always been like, New York was always the place I wanted to get back to. Like I applied to NYU and, I didn't get in, could have still gone to like a school in New York, but then I decided to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go undergrad, Chapel Hill, then I'm going to go like get my master's in New York. And then again, things happen. College takes time sometimes, but getting to New York was always something that I wanted because of film, because of music, because of arts, and visiting as a child, like I always had family in New York. So there was always that connection of like, wow, this is the pace I want to move at,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the opportunity that I think it provides is it allows you to connect with the best of the best in the world. You're around people who want it. I mean, people, you and I say this all the time, like, why would you live here and be so uncomfortable if you're not going to try and get it? You know what I mean? And no matter, I think, what you do or not, no matter how long your time period is here in New York, I feel like it sets you apart from everyone else in a way, because it helps you cut your teeth and get good at what you're doing, understand what it takes to really like make it, because you're around high achievers all the time.
Yes. That concept that if you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere. It's so true. Like it is absolutely true, because just your perspective, like your grind levels up, like everything about your approach levels up. And I'll say this typically for transplants, like people that come to New York, right? It's like, you're going to have to level up your grind. You have to put yourself in the position, but at least it's there. So I feel like when I even just being now in North Carolina, when I left New York, the mindset doesn't leave you. That idea that you can make it, you can build it, you can create it, whatever it is, that sticks with you. And I think that's the part that I most appreciate about New York is the ability, like it's strengthened my character. It's given me confidence in a way that I don't believe had I been in North Carolina the whole time, I would have that, even just opportunities, people that you meet just randomly. And it's like, oh, I do this and I do that. And like, oh, wow, I've been in a room with like amazing people and it was random sometimes. So yeah, I think New York provides you with an opportunity that very few places can in terms of building your self-confidence and honing your craft.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that. You connect with people and you create companionship with people, because I think in New York, people are in love with the idea of what you want to do and they want to help you get to where you want to go. And so there's this like, it's like, oh, what do you want to do? All right, got it. And it's one of those places where, coming from North Carolina, because obviously that's where I'm from as well. Like, it's just not something you really see down south in like, where we grew up, where it's like people aren't really, it's not that they don't want to help. The grind is just different. The level of seriousness and the ability to believe you're going to do it is just different, because you start to, when you start to be around people and watch them succeed. I actually just thought about this, and I mean, this is like literally completely unrelated, but I was thinking about how like 5 years ago, I was at the Soho House and I was attending like an event, and there were a few people speaking there. And one of the girls Paloma, who was speaking, was like, I'm a plus size model. And like, sometimes they don't have clothes for me. And she was like, but I try to be fierce and strong. 5 years later, she's like on the cover of Vogue America. It's like,
right.
And it's just like, that's the kind of place that New York is. You get to see people go from a certain space to another space. Like, and you're just like, I already felt your greatness when I met you. You know what I mean? But it's like, and in between that time, I had an amazing opportunity. I worked, on a fashion week team, and I had a chance to do her face, and we sat down and talked or spoke to each other. And I was like, this girl is so nice. She's such a, so it's like you have this moment where you see someone speak, then you have the personal interaction with them, right? Like I met her there, but it was obviously in passing, and then meeting her sitting down. And that's what I feel like New York is. And so when you see it, right, when you see it like that, it becomes this inspiration that's not really quantifiable. You got to spend time here to really see it. But it's
exactly.
Yeah. Then you start being
I totally agree.
I could do that. Like, you know what I mean? She did it. I could do that. Or, or whatever it is your dream is. Like, I don't like necessarily like, it's not necessarily like, oh, now I want to be a model, but it's like, oh, transformation is possible. You know what I mean? Her dreams were possible. So my dreams are possible.
Yep. It's the city of dreams for a reason. Like that's what I feel like. Like whatever that Alicia Keys song is.
New York State of Mind.
Yes. Just the feeling of being in the streets of New York. It feels like possibility. Like it feels like when you look up at these skyscrapers, like, well, because to be honest, like you're in what's considered like the capital of the world, right? It's like New York isn't just the place where creatives are. It's also the place where, top businesses are, where, the stock exchange, like there's energy in the city that's like surrounding it all the time. And you literally get that energy. And to be fair, it's like sometimes it can be overwhelming, like because you get the energy regardless. The pace of New York can wear on you, but at the same time, it can also energize you in ways that no other place can. Like it's
I love
literally
that we love New York.
York.
It's like you can be in a relationship with New York and someone next to you is also in a relationship with New York, and you guys are just like, yeah. And I mean, at the same time, you have bad days too,
Yes. And I feel like everybody has like their New York struggle story. Like whatever their struggle story was on how they got to New York, how they were able to climb. I think that the other thing that happens in New York is that you come into this almost leveled playing field, because it doesn't matter if you were like a big fish in a small pond wherever you were before. It's like, oh, now you here though, and no one cares. Like no one cares where you came from. They don't care what you do. They care about what happened right now and like, what are you proving? So there's a freedom, and I think that there's like an expectancy of, okay, you got to show up if you want to stand out. You've got to grind, and I think it separates the wheat from the chaff like real quick.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think it's a great place for a lot of reasons, and I feel like the energy that exhausts you also is the energy that fuels you, which is so funny.
Right.
Yeah.
So what made you want to come to New York?
Okay.
When was that moment? Yeah.
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to come to New York. I remember sitting down, like even at you and I had conversations about this early. Like even before you moved, we had conversations about it. Because I think both of us had this desire to go, but it felt, when you live in a small town, it feels like a heavy lift. Like you're just like, oh my God, like, could I do it? And like, will I make it? Because the idea of like making it, you don't even really know what making it is when you say that. When you haven't even done it yet, you're like, I want to make it. You're like, what's making it? You know what I mean? But anyway, it's like, will I not be homeless?
Right.
So
I made it. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. But I remember wanting to come here because of the opportunity. And then I always wanted to do makeup for as long as I can remember. I mean, I had other, ambitions and things I wanted to do, but I wanted to do makeup, and I knew that New York, for me, I associated New York with Fashion Week. And to me, Fashion Week was the ultimate thing that you could do as an artist, participate in it, be a part of it. I didn't even know how it worked, I was just like, I want the makeup I do to be on a runway in New York City. You know what I mean? I don't even think I really even knew Paris, Milan, London, any of those even had fashion weeks, if I'm honest.
They got fashion weeks in other places.
I'm like, oh yeah,
well, I want the one in New York.
Right. So yeah, so I always knew I wanted to come here because of that. And Fashion Week was the ultimate for me. That was the goal, one of the biggest goals. And I came here to pursue that, you know? It quickly turned into realizing that, I love fashion and I still definitely, always want to be connected to it. But fashion is not innately something that I'm good at. My own personal fashion, I should say, right? Like I don't have any Chanel bags at my house, Gucci bag, all these things that people have when they're really like fashionable. You know what I mean? And so I felt a bit more like an outsider, I think, in that space. But where I felt comfortable was relationships. And so where I think thrived in this industry was personal clients, celebrity, which was not even an intention at all. I wasn't like, I'm moving to New York to meet and work with celebrities. I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even an option to me. I was like, New York is about Fashion Week.
Really?
Yeah, girl.
It's so interesting to think about in terms of like how your career's grown.
Isn't that wild?
Wait, so how long were you in New York before you were at Fashion Week?
Okay. I did my first show, I think, in 2016. So maybe 3 years, 2 or 3 years.
Nice.
Yeah. It was fairly quick, actually. I remember even going down, like the year after I got there, I think 2014, I walked down to the actual, at the time they were still doing stuff in Lincoln Center. And so I went, that's no longer a thing, but I went over there just to see if I could see what was happening, get around the energy. By the time I had moved to New York, Bryant Park was no longer a thing. I think when you first moved here, they were still doing Bryant Park and they had moved it to Lincoln Center temporarily. And then, and now it's just all over the city. So it's just completely different in terms of energy. But yeah, that's why I moved here to do makeup. I knew I wanted to do makeup and I knew I wanted to do it full time. It was very much the intention behind it.
Dang, that's crazy. I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I knew it was makeup. I always knew it was makeup, but like I didn't know that there was like the obsession with Fashion Week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was
heavy
the driving force to like get you to New York. That's amazing. And to think that, you actually made that happen in a short amount of time and then kind of realized like, oh, not the right place I want to be. Like, oh, this ain't my move. It's funny thinking about how the path that you think that you want isn't always the path that you truly want or the one that you need.
Yes.
It's like you'll start out on it thinking like, okay, this is the goal, this is the plan. And then along the way you realize like, this is not aligned with me. And I didn't know that.
Exactly. And then you're like, yeah, you just realize you're like, oh, what are my strengths? What comes easy to me? So that's what I mean in terms of like the idea of like making it, right? Like you don't necessarily know. And I think for you, one of the things that I realized was like a strength. You've always been one of the most organized people I've ever known. Like I remember your apartment back in, NC. I would be like, the way the towels were organized, the way your room was organized. I was just like, this woman is organized. Okay. So like, I feel like you've always been like that. But then I think it started to translate in a way where I actually really noticed it, especially when I came to like family events or like Friendsgivings or, when you were releasing break tapes and like things you were put together, were always impressive from the level of care. Yeah. From the level of care in terms of like making sure there was, food there for everyone who was there, making sure people were greeted, making sure, the space felt good, coordinating all of these different things. And I just feel like your mind has the ability to really like understand like the minutia of an event, but also understand how all those things go together to create a bigger event. And in fact, you ended up working for an event company. Were you like that before you got that job, or did that job help you? Or I feel like that too.
Definitely helped me, but it's funny because like in reflecting and like redefining and pivoting and all that crap that everybody has to do, thinking about how I've naturally come into organizing and creating, right? So like it's just literally always been something that's been a part of my life. Like I joke about it, but it's like I used to like play office when I was like a child instead of house or whatever, you know? So like ideas and bringing ideas to fruition has always been something that's like natural to me, right? Like the desire to want to create, the desire to want to do things. And then the tactician side of realizing, okay, if I want to create something, it all started for me with imagination. Like I feel that I have a very vivid imagination. And so that's how you also manifest things, right? You can visualize it. So in order for me to be able to visualize something that I want to happen, I break down the details, right? It's like, okay, cool. I want an event. What kind of space is it going to be? When I walk in, how do I want to feel? What colors? What's the theme? Like, what's the energy? What's the vibe? So, the things I think I've learned over time, the elements that it takes to put together something dope, for me, it always started with imagination, with visualizing it. And again, like the same thing, if you like, I've done it with outfits or hairstyles, right? You like, you close your eyes and you really picture, like, what is it going to feel like? What is it going to be like? And that immersive world, and maybe partially because of being introspective and introverted, it's very easy for me to create worlds. You know, it's like, oh, all of these elements, and now you're in a different place. Like I've always loved fantasy and that kind of inspiration. So I've always been able to think outside the box, but then have the practicality part or the logistic part to pull it together. Because of always having like creative ideals and creative goals, in terms of a career, I always took like a more on the outskirts path. Like it was always like, yes, I can be an admin or I can, you know, like help somebody else with their thing. And I think even that has, you know, allowed me to see a lot of bigger events, put together larger events and things like that, like working for executives, working for large corporations that need to put on internal events. And you just start to see the pieces come together. So, you know, I worked in communications and public affairs for a while, and you put together events and you don't realize that you're gaining this experience as you go through it. But my last job that I had was working for, you know, one of the top event companies in New York City. So like we literally did the events for pretty much all of the biggest venues you could think of. You know, in New York, it was like, yeah, we're at the Plaza. We're at, you know, like we're at, we did the Tonys, like all of those types of things, like putting together events in a different way. That was more event production. And it gave me a real background in terms of elevating, right? That luxurious feel in terms of really creating an entirely different space. But doing this my whole life has helped me learn how to do it on a budget. It's helped me learn how to create something unique for anybody because it's all about perspective. It's all about storytelling. And that's another thing that I've always found interesting, and it kind of ties together. I think the reason that events tie together so easily is because for me, it's about a story. It's about an experience, right? Like it's basically a presentation and the people are just like moving pieces, you know, but the idea is to create this world and to tell a story through the colors, through the music, through the food, through what you even ask people to wear, how you ask them to engage with the event. So I don't know. I get like super excited about experience. I love experience.
Yeah, and I feel that energy, and I think it's really important to have intention behind bringing people together. So I've always noticed this thing about you, right? And I was in a place where I want to say it was like 2018, maybe December 2018, and then the beginning of 2019. I had hired somebody. I was doing my first masterclass, and I had hired someone, and it was a disaster. It just was the thing that I've learned about working with people is it's kind of like dating, right? Like when you go on your first date, you either have butterflies or like you don't, right? And then so like the butterflies may inspire you to have another date with this person, right? But then there's this like trial period in a way, like about a month to 3 months, something like that, where you get to meet and understand and know how this person moves. And I feel like there is, especially in business, obviously you should, what I've learned is just, you have to be very like cautious and kind of move, but also move with intention and the way that believe people in how they show up and stop trying to manipulate or change people to be who you want them to be. So, okay. So I'm in this situation, right? I'm in this situation and I am like so frustrated because I really, really wanted to have this event. And then I called you and I still remember I was getting food. It was so loud in the background per usual. You know how I am with the phone. And, it's so loud in the background. And I'm like, okay, Delisha, I really want some help. I know this isn't your thing. I literally was like, I know this isn't your thing, right? It totally was your thing, but I know this isn't your thing. But I would really love your help on this. Just a one-time kind of thing. Would you help me with, it was a very soft pitch. And you were just like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, let's take some time, sit down, just figure out what you want to do. And it was like, I relaxed. You know what I mean? It was like the first time I felt like, it was like my butt cheeks were tense. And then I was like, all right, it was just this feeling of relaxation. Cause it's like, we also had the connection of you being like my big sister. So it was like, you're just like, it's okay. I'll help. Like, let's just talk. Let's figure out if it's the right fit or not the right fit, but at least I can help you coordinate, you know what I mean? Or figure something out about maybe or not even coordinate, brainstorm on what the best solution is. And it just turned into this really dope experience. Like, working with you was so good. Like, I felt like I was like, oh my God, it's like everything I've ever wanted. And I want to ask you, because I feel like, what were you thinking when I asked you that? Oh no.
Really?
Or you were just like, yeah.
My biggest concern, and honestly, it's probably my biggest concern usually, is like, oh, can I deliver? Like my biggest concern, and that's why it was like, yeah, let me help you. like I don't know if I want to like take this on, right? I was like, yes, absolutely, let's help, let's figure it out, because like always wanting to make sure that in terms of just who I am, is that I'm always going to be an asset to whatever, situation that I'm, aligning myself with, where it's like, okay, cool. It was just like, okay, how I'm going to be able to do this in terms of bandwidth. But in terms of wanting to, I feel like that's never been an issue. It's always been like, okay, cool. Like, I like how Delina works. Like, I know that it's very straightforward. I know that, there's no wishy-washiness. And I also know that we can create a plan and build from there, and we know that we've got a plan and we're going to go back to that. So it never felt overwhelming in the sense of working with you. It was literally just, okay, am I going to be able to bring together all of the elements that you want, given, whatever else may be happening at the time?
Yeah.
So that was definitely my first thought. It was like, okay, cool. And then, once we went from there and really started figuring out what it was that you wanted to create, the truth is every event's like 5 things. There's like a venue, there's food and beverage, there's entertainment, it's like there's decor, and then there's people, so it's not like there's a whole bunch going on. It's just how you're going to freak it. Like, in what way are you going to make it unique? In what way are you going to tailor it for the experience you want people to have? So, like, once we got the idea in place, the other pieces, I don't know, I guess I never think about that as complicated. It's just, okay, we got to find the answer for that. Like, we already know it exists. It's just, we're on an adventure together to hunt for the right answers, So I felt really good about working with you on that project, because I felt that, like I said, like in general, I feel like we're always very straight shooters. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is what's going on, but this is really what you mean or anything like that. So, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, cool. I'm going to send you this. This is going to be the outline. If you, like, we made it very clear, like, check this document. We'll keep updated. And I think the transparency also makes it very easy, and honestly, working with friends is, it's like something that makes me nervous too. Like
Same.
It makes me very nervous because of long-term impact. You know what I mean? So it's like taking that into account in terms of treating friends the same with the same respect and with the same confidence that you would treat a client. So it's like, just because you can have a chill conversation about the details doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a conversation about the details. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have those same expectations. So for me, it was always just like, okay, cool, you need this, this, this. Okay, cool. If anything, it just made the process easier because there wasn't a need for any like pomp and circumstance or just like formality to it. It's like, okay,
yeah,
cool. Do this. All right, cool. Let's make it happen. Nope, that's not going to be a good look because this, that, and the third. Feeling comfortable expressing my concerns also. Because I think that's something people can be wary of in terms of working with friends. Being able to express concerns, being able to say, I don't think that may be the best idea. I think that that's, always a challenge, but it was never a challenge in working with you. And it still isn't a challenge in working with you. It's like, okay, cool. Okay, this is what you want. Okay, cool. Well, have you thought about such and such? Or, like it's very, no, okay, no. It's like Tetris. Like it's just very straightforward and we put it together. So I was excited. I was anxious at first. Like I was a little nervous just in terms of, can I deliver? But in terms of, like I said, like working with you, I felt like that was like a relief.
I think that
was
like
the easiest part.
I think we both have the ability to leave our ego outside of the room when we work with each other. And I think that like, there's never really been a time where like, either one of us has had to take on a task where we're like, I'm not doing that because like that's outside of my, job description or what I should be doing. Or like, I think that we both have a genuine desire to help. And we lead with that genuine desire to help each other. And I think that because we're like that, things kind of, they don't feel very like, I feel like I can be myself and we can talk about ideas and work them out. And I mean, you're amazingly organized. I know I talk about that a lot, but I think that like my, like for me, like organization has always been something that I've kind of has not really been a strength. And but I'm a doer, so a lot of people can't really tell because it's just like I'm just throwing.
Looks very organized,
right? Hey, I can make it look organized though. The delivery. The delivery. Aha. Yeah. So like the delivery is always like solid, right? Because I know what I want it to look like or feel like. But it's also part of like going on the trip itself. You want to be just as relaxing as actually being on the vacation. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like what you have the ability to do is to be able to see all of these ideas, these things that we want to do, and then understand that there's like a vibe. Like we spend a lot of time talking about the feeling that people would have. And I still get compliments now, like to this day, about that masterclass because I feel, and it was one of those moments where it just clicked. Like it wouldn't have been what it was without you. You were able to take the idea of it and just say, okay, but you knew that what people left with, how people felt was so important. It was like the top thing. It was like, I wanted people to invest in themselves and, you know what I mean? And, subsequently invest in me, but also feel just appreciated and loved and like, and cared for and with intention, cause you can feel that. And, I feel like you just completely delivered on that. And I mean, even since then, you and I have worked on, multiple projects. And I mean, like you're low key my operations officer. You just don't really know you, my CEO, but but yeah, I feel so grateful that I know you because I feel you spend the time understanding the big picture of what I feel like things should be or feel like. And because of that, the intentionality just supersedes everything and it feels good. it just feels good. It feels good. I feel very understood, which is really lovely. So now that and the world is pretty much virtual at this point, that's where we're at, right? Exactly. You and I have worked on a couple other projects. Like we did my second masterclass together as well, which was like, a virtual rollout, which just felt so good. And I think that also was a really amazing thing that we had a chance to work on. What do you think people should look for in a collaborative work environment? Because it doesn't work with everybody, right? I mean, you and I have had opportunities and had, great friendships with people, and it just hasn't worked out. Like, what do you think separates it? Like, what do you think people should look for? Because I think that's so important, like to find that person. Right. How do you find that person? I was looking for you for so long.
I know, right? And I was right here underneath your nose the whole time. I had no idea. I had no idea. Well, I think for me, it's about managing expectations. I think I always start with people actually being people, right? So like beyond this idea, beyond whatever thing it is that we're doing together, it's like I respect that you're a human being and that you're dealing with all kinds of other things. You have your own, purpose, your own passion. And when we come together, again, I think it's about having mutual respect. I think that that's one of the biggest pieces. And then I also think, like I said, managing expectations, understanding and defining what the role is, what those responsibilities are. Having a plan, I don't think can ever be underestimated. Like having and when it comes to working with people, like I've never used like contracts with people that I know, but it's not like I wouldn't advise against it. You know what I mean? It's not like saying there's nothing wrong with outlining what it is that you're agreeing to. There's nothing wrong with saying these are my expectations. And I think it's important to managing expectations, I think applies across the board because it's like, if you know that this person is not going to give you the quality that you want, do not expect that quality from them. You know what I mean? Like that's your fault for having an expectation that is beyond them. So it's like, okay. And honestly, like I would never be offended if there were any like some event or some experience, right? That you feel like, I think this person might be ideal for this. This may not be something I would want to work with Felicia on. Not a problem. And I think sometimes, like again, like you said, like there's not a lot of ego involved with the way that we operate. It's like, okay, cool. I want to do this. Okay, cool. How do we do it? Okay, let's do it. Okay, cool. We got to do this, this, this. Okay, I'll do this. You do this. There should be a camaraderie. There should be a flow. There should be a synergy, I think, when you're working with people. And again, managing expectations, even the very best people are going to have off days, and also I think it's always putting in context the value of what it is that you're doing. To say that, sometimes you can get caught up in smaller details and you don't really need to get caught up in the smaller details. Sometimes it's about the message that you're trying to get across. And, it's about, okay, are we going to wait a whole year to have the perfect event? Or can we have the event that's going to work and that's going to get us to the next phase, within 3 months? And then we regroup and go back. So I think it's always about managing expectations, whether that's the expectation for the experience or the expectations from the people around you, and realizing when you are still managing your expectations, but it's like, oh, you're not meeting them, and understanding, okay, this means you're not the person for what I need done.
Right.
And that's it. Like, that's all it is like, you're trying to fit this puzzle piece into a place that it doesn't fit. So for me, I think that that's important. I also am like super big on like sociology and psychology. Like I have people take tests all the time. I made Mario take like mad tests, like whether it's like personality test or learning style test. Yes, mentally. Or learning style or, I think understanding people and understanding the people you're working with cannot be neglected. I think it's an important part that, creatives don't necessarily think about it, especially in entrepreneurship, in terms that you're building a team, you're building a company. And regardless if they're close to you or not, or if they're creative or not, they're going to have expectations for you as an employer. So it's like, what am I doing? Am I doing the due diligence to find out who this person is and how they operate best? Because part of your position as a CEO or as an owner or founder is setting the tone. It's setting what things are to be expected. And something that, like I said, is important for me is like, it's very heart-centered. It's very, how are you feeling today? Like, what's going on? Because I know that how you're feeling is going to affect the work quality. Like, I know it's going to affect if you're interested in even staying here or not. So it's like, it's not the only reason I think about it, but I think about it because it affects everything, and I think starting with the people and starting to understand who it is that you're working with on different levels changes things. Even understanding, like I said, like how they learn. Like I talked to my husband about that. Whether he's like a visual learner, or an auditory learner, or a tactile learner. He tends to be a lot more tactile, where it's like, I need to go through this experience in order to do it. So I'm not going to sit here and try to like show him 20 slides on why I want to do something. And that's the same thing for your team. It's like, okay, how do they work? Let's adapt. Not everything should be necessarily about what works for you. It's like, what works for the team? How do they work together? Does this person work well with that person? Let me put them on projects together. I think that that's really important, is understanding your people and managing your expectations.
I love that. I think that just provides a lot of clarity. When you're looking for a client, do you also have or you have clients come to you? Because I know you also do, some management. Do you have them take those tests, those personality tests as well?
Right. So it's funny because that's what I've started doing, is having them like do assessments, like so that I can find the best way to meet people where they are. Even like when we were talking in terms of just the actual organization structure, like how your operation structure looks, it's about, okay, well, what's comfortable for you? Like, what do you already do? Okay. Where do you feel comfortable in terms of technology? Before I can start trying to put you on like 50 different productivity apps and you don't even have a smartphone, like, let me find out who you are, so I think that part's important. And sometimes for me, that's a consultation. It's really just talking to people and figuring things out. I also feel that I have a really good sense of intuition, and I trust that, so I tend to peep things about people in general just from talking. Like, it's like, okay, maybe they've got something personal going on. Like, or, oh, like, you ask questions, you see how people respond, you see if they're, super private and how they may interact in a work environment. If maybe they're feeling slighted, is this the type of person that's going to actually express their opinion, or do I need to dig for it? So also being present, like we talk about that a lot, like just be
all
there.
The time.
It's like, just be there with the person. And I promise you, they're going to tell you all kinds of things that they're not saying, so it's like, okay, cool. Interesting.
Or you're even going to be able to pick up on that energy. Like, one of the ways that we start our conversations typically is we start talking about the personal first, before we typically dive into the business. And sometimes sometimes we have conversations, and you've moved into this space where you've helped me start doing like business planning, like structural planning of, the company as a whole, which I mean, is a dream for me, because I don't, you know what I mean? You think so, like, that's so natural to you that when you're explaining it, it's almost like, did you watch Michaela Coel's show, I May Destroy You?
No, I started to watch like half of the first episode, but Bubblegum, her other one that's on Netflix, is bomb. Like,
okay, yeah, no, a lot of people love that one too. Yeah, chewing gum. Yeah. Okay, so there's this scene in I May Destroy You. I was going to reference, but I'll still reference it now. She basically puts Post-its up, and she's trying to write a book, and she puts these Post-its up, and it's like all these different Post-its, and she's just moving them. moving them from here to here to here to here, so she can get the storyline, the through line for the book, right? And I feel like that's what you're doing. It's like, it's like I have all these Post-its, and they're all, you know what I mean? It's funny, you're laughing because we just had a meeting yesterday. We just had a meeting yesterday and I was literally writing. She's like, why are you writing all these Post-its? Like, why don't you put this in a calendar? But it's like, funny enough, it's like, you have all these Post-its and it's like what you're doing is you're like, okay, how do we structure this so that it's not just Post-its all over the place? It's like, this is going to be the Post-it that happens on Monday. This is happening on Tuesday. This is happening. This is where we're going. This is what the plan is for the year. And so, I mean, I was trying to think about this in like a really big way in terms of, I feel like people need this as a service. What would you call this? Because I have so many creative friends that are so talented and confused like me.
No, right?
I make myself sound so chaotic,
like,
but
call it. I'm like,
right?
And
I mean, it's like,
because this is what I will say.
yeah.
Like, everything really is everything. So it's like the same way you can't separate your personal life from your business, right? Or the same way that if you're in a bad mood, it's going to affect the way that you do your work. It really is everything. So I feel like it's about finding a system, right? It's about knowing that you need a system in order to do whatever it is you're doing, and that you already have a system. It just don't work very well. You know what I mean? It's like understanding that there's a systematic way to approach anything, and that you can have a good system or you can have a bad system, or you can have an effective system or you can have an ineffective system, right? So it's like auditing, starting to understand, am I getting as much done as I would like to do? Okay, well, what's happening? Like, if I could take one piece and, delegate this to somewhere else or outsource this piece, which piece would it be? So like, I feel like it's important to understand that you need a system. I feel like it's important to understand that you have a system. Like, everybody has a system,
right?
Whether it's Post-it notes, whether it's, oh, I need a day planner. Some people, again, how you learn, but understanding that you have a system, and from there, auditing your system like is your job. That is part of your job as a CEO, as a founder, as a creative, as the idea bringer. Part of your job is building that system so that you go from ideation to creation consistently every time. Ideation, creation. I know I'm going to go this path. I know this is where we keep finances. I know that I go into this application to do brainstorming, that this is going to be readily available for other people on my team. Like, to me, I think that's the difference maker, is understanding everything that you do that you don't like doing. You should start having a plan in place to work your way out of that. Like, it's like when I start thinking about the stuff that I don't like doing, whether it's looking for where I put stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start putting everything in one place. And it doesn't mean, and that's the other part that I think sometimes gets lost in translation, is that this is like brushing your teeth. This is like taking a shower. This is part of your daily routine to assess where you are and what adjustments need to be made. So I think people don't think about it like that. They're like, oh, I get organized one time and then that's it. Like, whew, it's over.
Right.
It's like,
then
no,
it's just maintenance, but
day.
It's like, yes. So it's about falling in love with the structure. And I think that, like, I became a freelance artist, and truthfully, even when I was working in corporate, I wasn't structured. I would, get up in the middle of doing whatever I was doing. I'd go work in a conference room. People were coming in at 8. I'd always come in at 9, but I'd stay till 7. So I had my moves, and the best managers that I thrived with were ones that understood that, like, Selena's going to get the work done. She's just going to do it the way she wants to do it. And so, and that's what I mean about, not having the ego. But I will say this. So what I think happened for me in terms of working with you is it's easy to be comfortable with you because you're organized, but also you bring peace to my space because you're saying these things can get done. They just need to be put in a way where you can handle each thing every day. And funny enough, even just this week when we did like a check-in call, you were like, oh my God, you got so many different things done. And I was just like, Wow. Like I'm starting to kind of like shape up the structure of everything and get comfortable with the fact that like I have things to do. So now I'm waking up earlier because I'm like, oh, I have something to do this day. I have something to do this day. And so I think there's something to be said about moving with speed, right? You don't want to get caught up in the organization of everything. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that when you get to a place where you have speed and momentum, because I think that's important too. In fact, I would even venture to say that that's it, most important is to get the momentum going and then figure out, at least it's working for me. It's like, then try to start, right. I mean, maybe it's not, but then, try to find some way to kind of organize it because you don't want to get caught in the details. So like the balance of, I think you and I is like, it's like, all right, good. You want to run, you want to execute. Okay, cool. But wait, what are you executing this week? And then it's like a check-in with a coach almost, right, is what it feels like. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, let's check in with your exercises for the week. We're building muscles in the legs. Okay. Yep. Copy.
And that's exactly all it is. It's like organization building, because the truth is, it's like you have a system. You're like, you are organized.
Yeah.
And you have a systematic approach, but it doesn't mean that it's something you necessarily have always realized. Right? It's not like you've realized, oh, you probably have a natural desire to have things in order. Not everybody has that, So you've gotten to a place because of practicing, because of at least knowing I can't deal with this. Like, I've got to clean up this before I can start working, or I've got to do this before that. And I think that for other people, sometimes it's just learning how to make it part of your life, learning how to step by step understand. And honestly, I think it's a huge knowledge gap when it comes to productivity and efficiency and time management. I think there's a really big gap because it's not something that's taught to us. We don't learn how to do these things in school. Like, you don't learn how to manage your time efficiently. You don't learn how to prioritize necessarily. Like, you learn by doing it, but there's no class that's showing you, hey, this is how you should study. Like, even for me, which is hence college, it's like, I didn't know how to study. I was at home all the time. I got good grades because all I did was do homework and I was chilling at home the rest of the time. So eventually it got done. But when it came to building a structure for myself and saying, I got to study for 2 hours straight, and this is what I have to do from 7 to 9, it was very difficult. It was an adjustment. It was a huge adjustment. And I think that that's also where that awareness comes in, being present, meditating, like having the ability to focus is the first step in becoming more organized, becoming more efficient, because you have to be aware of what's happening, and that's what lets you push through and say, okay, for the next hour, all I'm going to do is this one thing. Like, I'm not going to get up from my chair. I'm not going to click on this other, internet window. I'm going to focus. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to be here present, and I'm going to get through this hour. And when you get through it, you're like, gosh, that was like way easier than I thought it was. But if you don't make that mental note and that awareness consistently, you're going to check out. Like, you're going to get distracted. We live in a time where the average attention span is like 8 seconds. Like, something's going to happen if you're not actively working to be there. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. So, okay. So if somebody is in the kind of the beginning stages of their business, and because, you're an entrepreneur, you're mentioning, okay, Delina, I haven't always been like this. What do you think they can do, something practical that they can take and use to be like a more organized version of their current selves?
The easiest thing, and sometimes it's like I go back to it occasionally, the easiest thing is your Google Calendar, Outlook calendar, whatever calendar. Put the things you want to do onto your calendar and set a reminder for those things, like play admin, play your own assistant. When I find that I'm slacking, I realize that I'm not doing the things for myself that if I were hired as, to do these things, I would be doing these things for someone else. So it's like, whenever it's, hey, let me set time each day to, even if it's 20 minutes a day will change your whole game. It'll change your whole planning game. Just 20 minutes. People don't realize how long 20 minutes is. It's like, if I just spend 20 minutes thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow, write that down, prioritize it, rank it. How important is this? And you do them in order of priority. And that's it. That's it. Like, I feel like it's not complicated. It's, are you going to do it or not? It's, are you going to hold your attention long enough to get through the task? You know, because it feels boring and it feels like stuff that you already know. Like, people feel like they already know what they have to do, you know, but that's the point. Yes. You have to make time to do it. And making time to do it is one of the things you have to do.
I love this so much because it seems so simple, but it's like, I'm sure people, you know, when you hear something that's so simple, it's like, that's the best way that it could have ever been delivered to you, because it's like, oh,
just right. Make the time to make the time.
Copy. Make the time to make the time. That's it. It's about making the time to make the time. That's perfect. You know,
make the time to make the time, for real, because it's time or money, you know? So it's like, I also think it's important when people think about their time like money, because obviously you can't get your time back, you know, so it's even more important than money. But people don't realize how much they waste time. If you think about it like, oh, I need to be on a time budget the same way that I'm on a money budget, you know, that's how it works. Like, for real, because in that hour that you spent like watching Netflix thinking it didn't matter, it's like, you could have made sales calls, you know, you could have worked on a script for an hour, you know, like you could have painted for an hour, you could have done something else for an hour, but you don't think about it like that, because you're like, I only got an hour, you know, between now and when I got to do something else. But if you had made time for the things that bring you joy also, like, I think that's important to me. I try to prioritize the things I'm most passionate about as like the first things I work on, because it gives me hype. I feel good. It's like, yeah, I did something for me.
I love
and
that.
Then it's easier to do the stuff that you don't want to do, or the things that are maybe for other people, because you've taken care of yourself and you feel good. Like, yes, when you put the things you love last, sometimes you don't get to them. You know, it's like 7:00 at night and you're trying to write, you know, for an hour, or you're trying to write 1,000 words. It's like, no, that should have been in the morning because that's something you really wanted to do. So it's like balancing that.
That's so good. How do you know when it's time to move on? How do you know when it's time to or time to stop working with just yourself and time to find somebody like you or to reach out to you? Because obviously I know your discernment. You're going to choose people you want to work with and make sure that the synergy is there, right? Like, just like you and I working together is perfect for me, it may not be perfect for somebody else, but like, how do they find their Delisha, you know?
Right. So honestly,
or when do they?
Yeah, I think it's important to know when you're out of your depth. Like, I think it's, again, a lot of this comes back to awareness. You know, a lot of it comes back to being present and realizing, is this what I want to be doing? Like, is this how I want to spend my time? And, 4-hour work week situation, it's like, is this the most valuable use of my time? Like, is this how I should be focused? Because this is like maybe administrative task that I could delegate, and I could actually focus on the things that bring in huge amounts of money for the business, right? So I think sometimes there's that piece where you realize, I think whenever you're an entrepreneur, obviously you come in and you're doing everything, but I think it's very important to have a vision that you are a company, that you are operating as every department, and that is not the end goal. So I think that there should be, even at the beginning, like there should be a plan on what is the first thing I want off my plate, because I think whenever people start a business, they don't realize that they have to do every piece of it. And they don't like every piece of the business. Some people like sales. Some people like the marketing, and that's where they're naturally gravitated towards. Some people just like the vision, creating that vision part. So I think it's important to know what your strengths are and to be able to identify strengths in other people. This is why HR is like mad important, and people don't think about it until later, because it's like, if you know a person, like a really good person that can put people in position, like that is what HR should be in its essence, right? It's finding the best fits for what you're doing. So I think it's important to realize, like I said, when you're out of your depth, when you're just pedaling and you're just trying to survive and you're trying to stay afloat. And I also think it's important to know what resources you actually have, because not every help, not every assistance has to be something that is an expense, right? Like, there are a lot of ways that you can exchange value. There are a lot of opportunities that you can create for other people, in terms of being able to collaborate. So I don't think that, I think what happens is a lot of people think, oh, I can't afford that. Oh, I'm not ready for that. Oh, I don't even know what they would do because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like they're trying to figure out and shift between what is CEO, what is CMO, what is CTO, what is CFO, because as an entrepreneur, you're all of those things. So I think having a basic understanding of business structure is important because it helps you realize when you're doing something you don't want to be doing. It's like whenever you're an entrepreneur and you're doing everything, you just think, oh, this is what it takes. This is what it is. And you're not thinking about the fact that, okay, in 2 years, I want to have a staff of 5 people. In 3 years, I want to have 10 people. What are these people going to be doing? And I think also that's important in terms of manifestation as well, right? It's like, if you build it, they will come. If I'm going to have an admin person and this is what they're going to do. They're going to handle phone calls. They're going to handle calendars. They're going to handle scheduling. They're going to handle, invoicing and whatever that may be. Now it's prepared. Now you're ready for somebody to step into that position. And in terms of like visualization and manifestation part, write the job description. Look at those types of things. Look at what admins do. Go find some, other actual job descriptions and build that person. And then they'll start to come. I feel very I feel very significant, that's not the word I'm looking for, but we'll go with that. Like, I think it's important that you're putting out what it is that you need and that you're clear about what it is that you need. So I think that that's really the bigger piece, because money shouldn't be the issue. Like, there's tons of qualified interns. There's tons of people that are looking for experience. There are tons of people that can work for, bartering or in exchange for services. Like, I think that people hinder themselves in thinking that they're not ready for help, when that's exactly where they are. Whenever they feel stuck, once you start feeling stuck and like you can't move forward, it's time to ask for help. And sometimes these things may even be temporary. You may take on a contract position for the next 6 months because work is going to be crazy. So like, hey, let me bring in a temp for 6 months and start to see how this works. And I know we talked about also just like in terms of references, like being able to
exactly. References are the key. I mean, you gotta, I think, take it slow with people, like we started this conversation out with that, is like taking it slow. And like you and I, I'm very grateful for you, and I never take you for granted. And I always give you the out. If you don't want to work on a certain project, I always am like, hey, does this sound interesting to you? Because I think that what happens is when you put people in certain positions, you start to have expectations of what they should be doing for you. And I think that and I've been guilty of operating in that way as well. And, it comes with maturity. But I think understanding what someone's strength is and leaning into that, is really important. Like, are they naturally good at this thing? Okay. Like, you're naturally an organized person. You're naturally good at this thing. So we're putting you together. We're making a decision that we're going to work together on these types of things, but you're not just a micro organizer. Like you're not just focused on this one thing. You're focused on the big picture and where things should go. So if it comes down to, okay, Delina is interested in doing this thing. Okay, Delisha is going to maybe figure out the bigger structure of it. And then who are we going to put into place to execute those things if Delina can't do it? Right.
Absolutely.
So I think the structure of it, understanding what the strengths are for me became, the most important thing. And then also just recommitting, right? Where we recommit to each other each time we work on a project, instead of just expecting that because you're in this position that, you would want to do everything. Cause you have your own life, you have your own things you want to do. You have your own things that you'd like to prioritize. And sometimes it's not a fit. And we've had some projects like that where I'm like, I think this might be a better fit for this person. You're like, great, bet, I agree, or are you excited about this? You're like, well, I'm more excited about this, and it's not a weird conversation. It's not uncomfortable. It just feels like, an extension of us just being like authentic to who we actually are.
Absolutely. And I think it's always important, like, in terms of really feeling out the relationship, you know what I mean? And like being able to have that communication, being able to say, hey, and I know sometimes when you're thinking about bringing somebody on, you always think permanent. You think, oh, I'm about to hire somebody. We about to be together forever.
We about to be together for like 15 years. Bop, bop, bop. Yeah. He's like, it's going to be like Drake and 40. We about to be out here for years. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, it's okay. Take it slow. Right? Stop trying to rush the person to the altar.
It's like dating. And I think that it takes a few different projects, and it takes being very clear about roles and expectations. I love business because I think it's an art form just as much as I think music and film are art forms. Like I love business. Like it's everything that we also already do. It's creation, right? So it's like, you got to know what you're doing though, too. Like there's nothing wrong with taking an entrepreneurship course. There's nothing wrong with going to get certified in at some sort of, professional aspect that, a typical creative may not consider. There's nothing wrong with understanding business in and of itself, right? Like whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's creative or non-creative, it all functions the same. The words are the only things that change, so it's like, oh, you got a line producer, you got a project manager, or, oh, you've got like your road manager, right? Those are 3 different industries, but they all doing the same thing. Is this ready? Okay, cool. This needs to happen here. Like they're managing pieces of a project. So I think that there's also nothing wrong with educating yourself about formal business practice, because it's always going to translate to what you're doing. The same way everybody has admin, everybody has finance. Like it's all the same structure. The words are the only thing that's going to change. So I feel like educating yourself about what it is that you're getting into fully is part of that due diligence. It's part of knowing your craft. It's part of knowing your business, and that's more than just seeing yourself by yourself at the peak of your industry. It's about, what does my company look like? What does my brand look like? What does my team look like? What am I bringing as a company? Like, picture yourself on the stock market. You know what I'm saying? Like, picture yourself as a commodity. So it's like, you start to realize, like, there are a lot of pieces in place here, and it's not meant for me to do it by myself. This is not a game that is built for you to play by yourself. It is built to play as a team. So getting to the team phase, all you're doing is setting yourself up for what's going to be the natural growth. So it's like, why wouldn't I be thinking about what I want in a CFO or what I want in my marketing person? And as you're going through things and realizing things that you hate doing, you need to be writing that down on a little document somewhere that says future CFO or future CMO. Handle calls to PR places, or handle, agency stuff, or whatever that may be.
100%. Listen, I am so grateful for your time. You're such a gem. And I think that as I'm listening to you, I'm like, Delisha is also a manifester, right? Like you speak life into the business that I have. You have a vision that is grand in the same way I have a vision for it to be grand. And I feel like because of that, us working together, we understand how important it is to have intention and to desire something to grow. And I feel like together we're watering this plant and we're watching it grow. And yeah, I'm just so happy that you were able to take the time to do this, because I think like I want this to feel like a moment in time. But I know, like, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this and we're going to be like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, whoa, because it was just those, we were watering it every day. We were watering it every day. So
And
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate, like, literally everything that you've been doing. Like, you don't understand the inspiration that you provide. I know we talk about like being C sharps, but it's important that I will say that in terms of building your team, it's important to have people that can believe, at the level that you are able to believe at. And I think that can definitely be a deterrent in your growth if you're the only person that can see how big, the potential is. It makes it harder, So like I appreciate that in terms of just seeing your vision, your inspiration, your passion, and your belief and your confidence. It's inspiring, it makes it easier to see the things that I want to manifest. And it provides inspiration to want to manifest those things for you as well, So
Yeah.
I very much appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And yes, I do. I feel like we're on the same vibration, and I'm very excited that we, have this moment in time where we're working together and we're enjoying each other and we're growing together. And I'm going to end on what you have behind you, because I've been reading this thing. It says, be proud of yesterday, be grateful for today, be prepared for tomorrow.
Boom. Boom.
Boom. Love you. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Love you too. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to It Takes a Village. Be sure to check out the show notes for more details on how to follow and connect with Delisha. It Takes a Village was produced by Tanny Productions. The team includes Britt Robbins, Delisha Dixon, and Maria Verhel de Jos. Our theme music is by B. Nick. If you like this conversation, subscribe right now so you don't miss our next episode coming to you very soon. Follow us on Instagram at Delina Medhin Presents, where you'll see and hear more clips from the podcast that didn't make it into the episode. And follow me at Delina Medhin. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.